Jess, founder, mom, friend. You good?
I feel really good. Really good today. I am that person that loves a platter, not a plate, but like a whole platter that is filled to the brim. And my platter is full, so I am very happy.
I love that. Hi, Jess.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Just, from Brentwood Country Mart, quick conversation to hear.
Just to hear. It's great. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm so inspired by the business that you are launching, Clementine Care.
Clementine Care, yes. It's been a journey to get here, and one that I think is so important. And I'm thrilled to be saying hopefully we'll be launching in 2025.
It's so exciting.
Thank you.
I know launching a business is not easy, mostly because it's so emotional.
Especially this particular topic, right? So Clementine Care is a platform that's going to help people, women that have gone through pregnancy loss, so help them on the mental care aspect, physical aspect, and just create community for them as they go through this process.
And how did you get into this line of work?
Clementine Care is a really personal one for me. So back in 2021, I had my first, Jimmy's first birthday. And we were in Mexico. I'll tell you the whole story. We were in Mexico and I was getting some weird kind of feminine cramping as you were. And I was like, oh, this is different pain. This is unique. And I was like, I'll keep an eye on that. Came back and ultimately it got worse, and called my doctor. And she said, well, if you can wait till Monday, come in for a scan. If you can't, go to the hospital. Okay, I'll just go to the hospital. Whenever a doctor says that, you're like, well, okay, I guess I'll take the the more immediate route. So I went in, and I thought it was an ovarian cyst. I've had them in the past.
Okay.
It hurt like the dickens.
Okay.
I didn't expect anything else. And so I went in hoping to get some pain relief, and they did just a routine.
This is in Mexico?
This was, we came back, but the symptom just kind of started there and persisted through. So that was kind of the first time I realized something was up. And whenever you get any sort of drugs in the hospital, they always do kind of this routine blood work of a pregnancy test, among other things. And unceremoniously, the doctor ripped open the curtain and said, "You're pregnant." And I said, "That's impossible." He goes, "No, it's not. I have your, your results right here." And I said, "I take birth control every day at 8 a.m. He goes, "Well, you're one of the 1%. You are pregnant." And so all of these dots in my mind started going crazy, right? I'm like, wow, it's happening, but I have bleeding, and I have pain. Am I having a miscarriage? What's going on? And ultimately the doctor came in and they said, "We actually think you did have an ovarian cyst, but you're also really early pregnant. Congratulations. We'll monitor you and see how it progresses." And so it was the surprise of a lifetime. Went home, did the routine blood work, HCG, which ultimately shows you if it's the pregnancy hormone that shows you whether or not the pregnancy is progressing. You want it to double every 72 hours at least. And that went well for a week or two. And then ultimately the numbers started to go down. And they said, we think you're having a miscarriage. These are the things to look out for. Good luck. Okay, so I just went from being pregnant through my birth control to no longer pregnant. Okay, I guess I'm processing losing a pregnancy that I didn't even know that I, was going to have. Okay, this is kind of wild, and was wrapping my head around that and was still in pain and was communicating to my doctor. And she just said, "Why don't we go ahead and do a D&C? You've been through enough. This has been dragging on for weeks. Let's go ahead and end this for you." I said, "Great," right? I didn't really know it was an option. And she said, "Okay." So she goes in and does it. I told a few friends what was happening. They said, "You're going to feel so much better tomorrow. The hormones will be out. You can start your road to recovery." Okay, great. So have the procedure, woke up the next day, still felt terrible, horrible. And I called my doctor back, and she goes, "If you have any pain, substantial pain, more than you've already had, you need to go to the ER because it could be something called an ectopic pregnancy." And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "I don't think that's what's going on, but if you do, just call me back." And the long and short of it, is between that time and the next day, my tube did rupture. I had an ectopic pregnancy. Went to the hospital, was rushed into emergency surgery. And I think we've all seen those ER shows like Grey's Anatomy ER where you're like, where you jump the line for the surgery, you're like, that's not good. Right. So I'm like getting wheeled back as they're like semi-jogging to the operating room. And I just remember having this thought of like, this is really bad. I hope this all goes okay. And I remember laying on the table and then saying, do you have any kids? I said, I have a son. And it sounds so cheesy, I guess, for lack of a better word. But I was like, maybe they'll try harder. Like somehow if they know I'm a mom, like all of these things just started really just running through your head. I was like, I don't want to leave my kid. This is really, really bad. And knocked out, thankfully, obviously still here. I'm a fallopian tube down, but survived the ordeal. And after that, spent a few days in the hospital. I'd lost a lot of blood, survived, went home, and really started to process what the heck had just happened to me. Not only had I lost a pregnancy, but I had a pretty traumatic health event that disrupted my life. And that was really, really difficult emotionally and physically, but ultimately set me on this journey to creating Clementine Care. So I can talk a little bit about that too.
And now you're pregnant with your third.
I am pregnant with my third. You can absolutely get pregnant after an ectopic pregnancy with one tube. Come to find out the tube floats to the other side, catches the egg.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. There's this.
I didn't know that. I'm like crying. I was there with you in the ER. Of course, I'm always crying. Well, that's not nothing.
It's not nothing. It was an experience. And so
your OB sent you to the ER?
So they missed it, right? I think the unfortunate.
Have you switched your OBs?
Yes. I did.
I'm an advocate.
She did such a good job with my first.
Not good enough.
Not good enough. Yeah. It was an interesting conversation because ultimately I didn't present like a normal ectopic, right? It wasn't a textbook ectopic. Ultimately, I think I got pregnant quite a long time before when they had originally thought, but I was on birth control, so I wasn't looking for it. And they just flat out missed it. I went through 5 different doctors. There was only one that said I wouldn't rule out ectopic. And it ultimately cost me a body part and some trauma, obviously, that went along with it.
Yeah. And now advocacy. You're turning that trauma into advocacy and creating a digital platform.
Yes.
A community for people with pregnancy loss.
Exactly. So after this first loss that I've had subsequent thereafter. But after this first loss, I remember laying in my bed and doing like a search on the internet. And what I was really looking for was like, when some people get pregnant, they go to like what to expect when you're expecting, or like the Flow app or Ovia. Like there's a bunch of different destinations. I was looking for something that was like what to expect when you're no longer expecting, like some destination for women that had pregnancy loss. I made a big assumption that it existed.
Like creams or foods or supplements or what?
Like anything, really.
Like,
but really what I was looking for was a community or just like a platform, a business that was for this specifically. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't there.
What? It's so crazy.
Isn't that crazy? Like it was, I just still get chills thinking about it because this happens 1 in 4 pregnancies.
Well,
like millions of women.
Well, like every woman that's ever had a baby has had a miscarriage.
Many,
maybe that they didn't even know about.
Many that, but now because we can test so early for pregnancy,
right.
We call them chemical pregnancies before they have a heartbeat kind of in that time, 4 weeks to call it 6 weeks. People know, right? And they feel that loss. And so people are knowing earlier and earlier, and they are realizing that they've lost pregnancies kind of in that really early time.
So you're creating this community to foster support. Mm-hmm. And are you bringing practitioners in?
Yeah. So it's been a fascinating just learning journey as we've gotten to this point in Clementine Care. Because when I started it, I thought maybe it's a product. Like maybe women want a special pad for when they have to go back to work, right? When they're having pregnancy loss. Like, what is it really that women want? I knew I wanted a centralized place for care and for support and information, but I didn't really know for sure if that's what other women that had experienced loss wanted. And so I was in business school as I started thinking about this idea, and ultimately graduated and had, hi, you're lovely. I love dogs. Yes, I do.
Keep her inside.
So where was I? Ultimately, I wanted to understand what women really wanted, like as they were going through their pregnancy loss. And so graduated business school, kind of had those skills behind me, and hired, brought on a woman that worked for IDEO. Are you familiar with the company?
No.
So they're the ones that are credited with like inventing the mouse for the computer. They're ideators,
right.
They are researchers. And I knew, because this was such a sensitive topic, that I wanted somebody that knew how to ask the questions in a really thoughtful way to help me on this journey. So ultimately, over the last year, we've interviewed over a dozen women that have had pregnancy loss, specialists in the field, think maternal fetal medicine doctors, OBGYNs, mental health care experts, really anybody that can be associated doulas with pregnancy loss, in a hope to understand what women really need as they go through what many have described to be one of the worst times in their life. And there were a few common threads that really like pulled out through everyone. You know, everybody's experience is a little bit different, and especially the emotional experience. But there are other things that were really specific. One being that they felt like the medical teams that they were with kind of dropped them after this loss. And
because they were no longer important.
I'm not sure if it's so much that they're no longer important. I think it's more, and I say this really tenderly, that it's no longer medically a crisis or medically something that they need to monitor physically. Exactly. So they say, and they're jaded, right? As we mentioned, this happens all the time, right? Pregnancy loss, miscarriage is very common. And so it's not common, however, to the person that it's happening to. This may be only the first time, or perhaps the second or third or whatever. But they mostly say, you know, come back to us when you're pregnant. This is what's going to happen. If you're lucky, they'll tell you that. And then call us if you have, you know, bleed through more than one pad in, you know, the next hour. And they're kind of shuffled off.
On to the next.
Right. So there was that thread. Second thread was this kind of need for answers. Like, I think for a lot of people, when they get traumatic news, a lot of people just black out, right? You're like, of course you're not expecting to hear there's no heartbeat or it's not a viable pregnancy, et cetera. And when you finally do kind of come back to yourself, you're like, I have a million different questions, and now I can't get a hold of the doctor to answer them. And so really wanting like medically backed information and research to answer those physical questions. And then the last thread that came through that was highly apparent was this need for specialized mental health care. Many of the women that we spoke to said, I had a therapist, she or he is great, but they weren't really good at this. Like, they didn't know how to help me through this. This is such a specific thing. I was looking for something more. So those that were financially able maybe continued seeing this person and saw somebody that was focused in fertility or in loss. That led us to Clementine Care, which ultimately is a community of women that are supporting each other that have been through this event. It's, you know, powerful, empowering medical information for what's happening physically in your body as you're going through a pregnancy loss at various stages. And it is different depending on where you lose a pregnancy. And then the ability to access professionals that have a focus on pregnancy loss and women's health.
It's fabulous.
I'm so excited.
So am I. It's so needed.
It's so needed.
It's really shocking how undervalued we are as a sex.
Yeah.
That it's not even, that we don't even have this.
Isn't that the truth? And that was one of the, you know, as a business-minded woman, as somebody that had has kind of been in this field scholarly, it's like, why doesn't this exist? Like that was kind of a hypothesis or question that I really wanted to answer in this research. And I think there's a few reasons, one of which you just alluded to, which is women's health
Confronted.
goes down here, right? I think the second thing really is not all entrepreneurs, well, many entrepreneurs aren't women, right? They're still primarily men. Secondly, not everybody wants to live in this space, right? Where you're talking about pregnancy loss, where you're advocating. You know, there's this feeling oftentimes of wanting to move past.
Right. You don't want to relive your trauma.
Exactly. And so there is a bit of that, but ultimately it just ended up being a footnote for everybody. Like, oh, you know, it's kind of nicer to focus on pregnancy, right? It's kind of nicer to focus on trying to conceive for somebody that doesn't have fertility issues. Like, that's kind of a happier thing. People like that more.
Right.
And then, you know, issues that are really sensitive and tough, you know, don't necessarily get the attention that they should.
Spotlight that
the
they
spotlight,
need.
Exactly.
There's a big conversation happening with perimenopause now. That wasn't even happening 5 years ago, I feel. And so I feel like it's very timely that you are launching because it's time.
It's totally time. And, you know, when we started on this journey, when we initially did the research, we were nervous that we would have to pay, you know, do a campaign of paying people to share their story with us.
No,
right? And I was telling my partner, I said, I don't think so. I think women are really eager to tell their story. I'm seeing folks that where people went was Reddit, Facebook. They had these really active and intense conversations, right? Which was obviously on a business front. I'm like, oh, this could be great if it was just more centralized in the right spot.
Like having a shared forum or a shared blog on the website. Now, do you find that some people are, you know, don't want to share about it? Or do you feel more and more people want to share and connect?
I think people want to share and connect.
Yeah.
I think it's been I think it's been such an isolating experience for so long.
Yeah.
Like recently, a story that I'll share is I was in Coronado down in San Diego, a little community. And I was talking with this mom, never met her before in my life. And I kind of overheard a conversation she was having with her mother-in-law. She just had a loss. And I mean, you could feel the emotion from her, right? She had tears in her eyes. And I said, you know, I just want to share with you. I had a loss as well at 9 weeks recently. And I'm actually, you know, making this platform and, you know, here for you if you ever want to connect. And she was just like, thank you. And then the story came, right? It's like almost giving people or women the opportunity to share that.
Yeah,
Giving them the platform, right? The ability to.
Giving the ability to.
Asking the question.
Right. It's like when you go through some sort of silent trauma and then you connect with someone, you're in some sort of secret club. And so maybe it doesn't have to be so secretive anymore.
I don't think so.
What are you manifesting for the future, for your future and Clementine's future?
Okay. So on a personal front, manifesting a healthy baby come April. Baby girl, manifesting a healthy marriage. My husband and I are going on 8 years.
Congrats.
I love him. And we are great, manifesting happy kids. And then for Clementine, I'm manifesting expansion. I feel that this is going to be a successful business. I feel that it is so necessary for women. We're launching in California to begin with, but I'm manifesting it rolling out quickly to the other states and helping as many women through this as we possibly can.
I know it's going to be successful.
Me too. Yeah.
We need you.
I needed this. I'm creating exactly what I needed when I went through my losses. And I'm so hopeful and like manifesting like women hopefully connecting on this site and manifesting those conversations of like, I'm so happy this site exists. I'm so happy that I have a place to go to as I go through this pregnancy loss. So those are the things that I keep thinking about that I want to bring to fruition. And I'm just in the process of finding the right people to help me do that.
Congrats.
Thank you. I'm excited. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here today and sharing your story. Not everybody gets deep and is able to really be vulnerable.
I hope it helps someone out there that's going through something share. It does help to share.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thanks, babe.
Mm-hmm.